Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Rikesh Lalu, and this is my new podcast, Perspective. Thank you so much for tuning in wherever you are, whether you're at home, at work, at the gym, driving your car, cooking, folding laundry. I don't know what it is you're doing, but I am beyond grateful and so humbled to all the listeners for your support on my journey. If you enjoyed this episode of Perspective, please support me by clicking on subscribe. I wanted to create a platform where I can share my experiences and perspectives on many different subjects, ranging from spirituality, mental and physical health, meditation, energy, the universe, the world as it is, and as I see it now. This platform is a safe space not only for me to share my experiences and perspectives on life, it's also a space where I encourage you, the listeners, to reach out to me, as I'd love to have you join me in discussions to share your perspectives, experiences, knowledge, and wisdom. This is a platform that we can use together to help others and ourselves throughout our healing journey called life. I decided to name the podcast Perspective because seeing and connecting to life through a different lens can open up our minds, our energy, and our lives to a perspective that we never considered before. We're all mirror images of each other, and when we see life from the other side of that mirror, it can honestly change everything in an instant, as it's done for me over the many years. For this first episode, I wanted to share my experiences and struggle with mental health. Before I begin, just a quick disclaimer. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, a counselor, or a psychologist, and in no way am I providing any medical advice. I'm just discussing my struggle with anxiety and depression and suicide attempts. If you struggle with mental health or you're experiencing suicidal thoughts, please seek out someone you trust or a medical professional to discuss options on how they can help. I am simply sharing my experiences and what helped me on my healing journey. So now that the disclaimer is out of the way, let's dive into the story. Now that I'm on the other side of mental health, I know that it's my purpose and mission to share my experiences in as many ways as I can. Hence why I decided to start this podcast. It's been a long time coming, and my guidance from within has been telling me to do it for quite some time. Not enough of us talk about our struggle with mental health, and sharing our stories and perspectives can truly help someone out there listening tremendously on their healing journey. It can open them up to options and ideas that they never considered before. In the world we live in, mental health is seen as a weakness. When diagnosed with anything that branches from what is considered mental health, the solution from a medical standpoint is medication and counseling. For me, medication made things way worse. I only began to heal when I embraced the spiritual, holistic approach to healing. That's what I'm going to share with you today. For the past 15 years, I've been struggling with anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. I didn't know that this was the case until a few years ago when I wasn't able to suppress it anymore. For most of the past 15 years, I dealt with stress, mental health, and negative emotions by making very good friends with alcohol and weed. At the end of every day, I'd smoke a little weed because it calmed that feeling of being on edge. A few times a week, I'd also consume alcohol, especially when I was going out with my friends or cousins in the weekend. When we went out, we would drink excessively to the point where the next morning I had spotty memory at best of the night before. When this happened, I'd tell myself, damn, if my memory is that shoddy, I must have had a really good night. Alcohol and weed was a coping mechanism for me. Instead of having to deal with my stress and negative emotions, I was using substances as a tool to avoid having to deal with any of it. It was a means to an end for me. I also watched a lot of TV to escape from reality. But as the years went by, smoking weed once before bed turned into once after work and once before bed. Then all of a sudden it turned into once after work, once after dinner, then one more time before bed. My tolerance levels were increasing substantially because the anxiety and that feeling of being on edge was also increasing. I felt like I had to smoke more in order to keep it in check. I found that I went from drinking multiple times a week and replaced that habit with smoking weed. I justified it by telling myself that it's good for stress relief and it's better than drinking alcohol. Better for me, at least. At least the weed doesn't give me a massive hangover the next day. About a year before COVID, so I'd say early 2019 or so, I got a new job with a commercial insurance firm. At my previous job, I was already dealing with anxiety attacks at work, although I didn't realize that's what it was at the time. I remember one day I had a backlog of emails after lunch and a lot of work to complete on my desk. And I was going through some very stressful emails, and all of a sudden my vision just started to go blurry. I started to feel that anxiety in my chest, and it was getting worse by the second. Not only am I feeling the anxiety from my work, but I'm also my vision starting to go blurry. So now I'm freaking out because I can't see anything. As my body went into fight or flight mode, I started to hyperventilate. I began to cry, and I didn't know what to do. Luckily, I had a good friend of mine sitting right across from me, and she noticed what was happening. She came over, got me up, and took me to a quiet space. She waited with me, guided me through breathing to calm me down, and not long after, my wife was there to pick me up. This was my first really intense experience where I recognized it as an anxiety attack. My mind and body went into full flight or flight, and it's a feeling that it's hard to explain when you have no awareness of it. There was a lot of other stuff going on at work as well, so for many reasons I convinced myself that it was the job causing the stress. We always tend to play the victim in these types of circumstances. I believe that it was something in my external world that was the problem. So let's go back to early 2019 when I started to work for a new commercial insurance firm. On my first day in early February 2019, we had a huge snowfall, and I was late on my first day. My manager was quite understanding and told me that nobody made it to work on time, so it was okay and nothing to worry about. Now that I look back at it, it was a sign. The universe was trying to tell me something. This job was the trigger that drove me into full-blown anxiety and depression. There were so many signs leading up to this moment, but I couldn't see it for what it was. For 3 weeks, I would wake up every day at 6 a.m. and jump into the shower. In the shower, I would cry hysterically, and I had no idea why. I didn't tell anybody about this. I'd just cry, put on a brave face, like nothing was happening, get ready and go to work, because that's what I had to do. During the second week at my new job, I had another minor anxiety attack at the office and had to use my emergency asthma inhaler to open up my lungs enough just to breathe from feeling the anxiety. I discounted this as an asthma attack because my inhaler made me feel better after a few minutes. After this attack, I was taking Ventolin every day just to feel like I was able to breathe. By week 3, I left for a coffee break, went downstairs in the building and called my dad, crying like hell. I explained how I had been feeling over the past few weeks, and he didn't know what to do either. He just said, talk to your boss and go home as soon as you can. That was a difficult conversation to have, but I spoke with my manager, Yarko, and I was so lucky to have him because I didn't know that he was an advocate for mental health. He immediately put me on a leave with pay. I am honestly so grateful to him because my wife was on maternity leave and I was the only income at that point, and we just bought a new house a few weeks prior. It really did save me financially for a small period of time. For the next few weeks, I literally couldn't get out of bed because of the severe depression I was experiencing. During these few weeks, a successful day for me was literally getting out of bed and taking a shower. I felt so terrible because I had a 2.5-year-old and a 3-month-old that I wasn't able to help care for. My poor wife was caring for them all on her own. At this point in my life, I didn't believe in religion or spirituality, but I did strongly believe in science and medicine. I considered myself to be an atheist. I went to go see my doctor, and after answering a few basic questions, she diagnosed me with anxiety and depression. She suggested that I connect with a counselor and begin taking an antidepressant called Cipralex. I started off with a 10 milligram dose and started to see a counselor the following week. I was told that it takes about 3 days or so to feel the effects of the medication. After the 3rd day, I felt great. I was able to get out of bed, I felt more energy, and I was able to get through the day without feeling anything. I was seeing a counselor and talking a lot about my emotions and setting boundaries, and I learned a lot over a few weeks. But this was a problem because I literally wasn't able to feel any emotion. I wasn't able to feel sad or down, but even worse, I wasn't able to feel happy or joyful. I just felt dead inside. I realized this when we dropped our daughter off to daycare for the first time. She was just shy of 3, and I was feeling quite emotional about it prior to starting the meds. That day we dropped her off, I felt absolutely nothing. And my wife was crying her eyes out. And as hard as I tried, I just couldn't feel a thing. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just figured the medication is doing its job, so it's probably a good thing, I told myself. I'm pretty sure my wife thought I was crazy that I wasn't crying at this point. The depression was under control, but I was still experiencing quite a bit of anxiety after about 6 weeks on the meds. I officially quit from my commercial insurance job because I told myself that it's what caused the breakdown. We needed income, so I found another job close to home. As soon as I started the new job, the anxiety started to get worse, and all of a sudden I was starting to feel that struggle again in the morning with getting out of bed. I discussed this with my doctor, trying to get ahead of it, and we decided collectively to up the antidepressant to the max dose. I tried this for a few weeks, but the anxiety was still getting worse. Since I was already on the max dose for Cipralex, she prescribed a topper which would take the edge off. Once this kicked in, I felt okay for a couple of weeks and was making some strides at my new job. Then life hit me like a bus. My grandma passed away after struggling for a while. At her funeral, I felt absolutely nothing. I couldn't even shed a tear for her. It was scary to me that I wasn't able to feel anything at all. I was forcing myself to cry for her. I spoke about this with my counselor, how I didn't feel anything, and she said that it is an effect of the medication because it changes the chemical balancing of neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine in the brain, lessening the symptoms of anxiety. She said that it prevents us from feeling our negative emotions so intensely. It was preventing me from feeling anything at all. Forget just my negative emotions. My counselor was telling me that I needed to create space for my emotions in order to process them. But how was I supposed to do this if I couldn't feel anything at all? I knew that I had to deal with my emotions because they weren't going away. My anxiety and depression was starting to get worse, and taking more medication wasn't the answer. So I decided to go cold turkey and stop the medication. Maybe that wasn't the best idea, but for the first few days, I felt so good. I was able to feel my emotions, both good and bad. Just feeling something again made me so happy. After about 4 days, I started to experience the side effects of discontinuing an antidepressant. Every day for 3 weeks, I felt intense vertigo. I had to go to work every day feeling like this all day long for 8 hours. Every day, I'd wake up and think to myself, just take the medication, it's fine. It'll make you feel better. The vertigo is not worth it. But I powered through these thoughts because I felt like I was addicted to the meds. It's the same thoughts I had about smoking weed or drinking alcohol. My mind would say, just do it, it's okay, you'll feel better. It'll take the stress away, it's not a big deal. Everybody does it, it's normal. Every day for 3 weeks, I was battling these side effects and thoughts. Even though this was a pharmaceutical drug, it was just as addictive as any other substance I was using to cope. About 8 weeks after starting this new job, I couldn't take it anymore and I quit. I convinced myself that it was a combination of getting off the meds and the new job that was making me feel this way. I had absolutely no awareness of what was happening. Luckily, I was still able to earn an income working for my dad at his office. Again, I was ignoring what was happening deep within, playing the victim and blaming the external world. One of my worst moments was when I had a full-blown anxiety attack on my wife. I blew up on her and went to the garage to cool off. I had already been dealing with fighting off suicidal thoughts at this point, but on this day, I took action. The voice sourcing from the darkness within said, just do it. It's time. This isn't worth it anymore. Be strong. I was also afraid of causing more damage to my wife and children. Suicide was a solution, so I can't hurt them anymore. Without any hesitation, I grabbed an extension cord, I tied it to some framing in the ceiling, and I attempted to hang myself. In this moment where everything started to go dark, I thought this was it. But the universe took action. Something bigger than all of us came to my aid. At the very same moment I was doing this in the garage, my daughter was having a play date at my neighbor's house and started to cry out of nowhere. My neighbor called my wife to pick her up. For some reason, my daughter came looking for me. We were all so connected, and my daughter knew something was wrong in that moment. As I was blacking out, I heard my wife and daughter walking towards the garage. I snapped out of it, untangled myself, before my daughter could see what I was trying to do. When they came in, they both knew something wasn't right. My wife knew right away that I had attempted something. I was crying hysterically, and my daughter said to me, "Daddy, you told me one day when I was crying that whenever we cry, sometimes all we need is a hug." My 4-year-old daughter gave me a big hug, and it was one of those moments that I'll never forget. A spiritual awakening is the process in which an old part of you dies so that a new you can be born. That day, in that moment, a part of me did die. The part of me that didn't want to live any longer. The part of me that couldn't handle it anymore. The part of me that was struggling to survive. But like a phoenix rising from the ashes, a new part of me was born. The part of me that shaped the person I am today and the person I am becoming. The part of me that loves more than anything being the best father and husband. The part of me that loves to be in service of others by sharing my experiences, knowledge, and wisdom that I've been blessed with. The part of me that operates from unconditional love, compassion, empathy, and kindness. The part of me that is capable of things that the old me never would have believed. That moment changed everything for me. For months leading up to this moment, my wife was sending me info and articles on spiritual awakenings. I just get mad at her, saying that I didn't believe in that nonsense and that the only thing that's going to heal me is medicine, science, and myself. I had so many anxiety attacks on her and was treating her so badly during this time, I honestly turned into a narcissistic asshole. I was again being a victim and blaming everyone and everything in my life. It was them, it wasn't me. I was experiencing something called the dark night of the soul, which is the process of surfacing all of the negative emotions of the old self. It had me face the depths of the darkness and demons I had within so that I could learn from it, let go, and alchemize that energy. I don't even know how she found the strength to stay by my side. She is a saint. She is an angel. She just knew that it wasn't the man she married. She knew that I was dealing with something that was beyond most people's understanding. As hard as it was for her, she still believed in me, and for that, I am forever grateful to her. After a very severe anxiety attack on my son's birthday, I kicked everyone out of my house out of anger. It was one of my worst moments, to be honest. I laid down in the living room after everybody left, and I just started to breathe deeply to calm the anxiety, and somehow I induced myself into what I now know was a meditative state. I saw something in this place that I had never seen before, but I felt a presence and a power within me. It was a part of me that I never connected to before, but it felt amazing to do so. Over the next few weeks, I started to embrace what my wife had been telling me for months. We describe it as mental health in our society and from a medical science perspective. But as I read more about a spiritual awakening and the dark night of the soul, I started to see that the symptoms were identical. All of a sudden, everything started to make sense. A lot happened between this moment and now to get me to where I am today. But this was the beginning of my journey towards truly healing and overcoming what society calls mental health. All of this was the best thing that ever happened to me. Instantly, my perspective on the mental health and everything that all of my pain and suffering just completely flipped. I embrace the knowledge and wisdom of the sages, knowledge and wisdom that has been with us for thousands of years. I committed to meditating every day to feel my emotions and do deep dives into what I was feeling and why I was feeling them. I committed myself to learning about the chakras, our energy bodies, and our energy fields and how they can store wounds, traumas, and all the emotions that we suppress in different ways. I read the Bhagavad Gita multiple times, the Dhammapada, excerpts from the Bible, the Upanishads, and many other spiritual texts just to learn more and more and more. I was so fascinated and didn't realize how much wisdom these pages had. I learned so much about the universe and how we are all interconnected. I learned about the connection between knowledge and wisdom passed down for generations, and how modern day quantum physics and neuroscience is starting to get to the point where they're proving what the sages had known all along about humans. It's been a journey that has connected me to my inner world and parts of me that I never knew existed. It's connected me to abilities and skills that I'm so passionate about today. Things I never thought would be possible. But here I am, living a new reality. Here I am, living my mission and purpose. My mission is to alchemize and heal my inner world, to raise my vibration, and to share my story with others, because not enough of us are brave enough to do it. After I embraced what society and medical science calls mental health, after I began to meditate and feel the emotions, it led me to the root of what I was experiencing. I was able to process it, let go, and transcend beyond it. The emotions needed to be felt. They were my teacher. Since beginning this spiritual holistic journey, I've become a better father, a better husband, and overall a better human being. I overcame the symptoms of mental health, or what I now understand was a spiritual awakening, by embracing it, not running away from it. Through conditioning and the way society is today, everything that I was doing as my old self was just suppressing and making things worse. So much of what we've been taught in this world is so backwards and wrong. Mental health is our heart and soul trying to tell us through our mind and body that it doesn't like who we are anymore. It's the soul's way of trying to shake us into awakening to the truth of who we are at the deepest levels within. Instead of turning to coping methods like alcohol, drugs, or mindless entertainment, our soul is calling on us to create space for what we're feeling so we can actually feel it and understand it. Through this process, we can truly heal and evolve as we are meant to do. Humanity is experiencing one of the biggest purges of negative energy in its history because we are ready to evolve and transcend. Mother Earth is ready to evolve and transcend. So if you're experiencing mental health, when you feel anxiety or depression, separate yourself, breathe into it, and start asking questions about why you feel the way you do. Ask yourself internally. It's trying to create a pathway to the root of our pain. And if we follow this path it's creating, we can truly heal physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So next time you feel stress at the end of the day, take 15 minutes of silence to close your eyes, to breathe deeply, instead of drowning and suppressing those feelings as we've been conditioned to do with substances or mindless entertainment. Be brave and stand up to it. Embrace it. Stop running away from it. Emotions are energy in motion, and it's meant to be felt. There is so much more that I'd like to share as I dive deeper into my story and what I've learned over the past few years. I can't wait to share more with all of you. If you feel connected to my experiences and want to reach out, please contact me on Instagram at Rikashlalu. I'd love more than anything to hear your story and build a community. On the next episode, my beautiful, amazing wife Disha will be joining me to share her perspective on mental health and being on the flip side of the coin in our journey. Please tune in, as it's going to be very, very interesting. Thank you so much for taking the time out in your busy days to listen to my story. It means the world to me. Please support me by clicking on subscribe. Thanks again for listening to my podcast Perspective. I'm Rikesh Lalu.